Greetings, everybody. Welcome to thctrust.org. You're here with Tex Masson, the first trustee. Today, I'm going to go over the master file. This is going to be the latest version of it, the most up-to-date version of it. So to start out, visit the website, www.thctrust.org. Make sure you don't go to .com, it's .org. And start your membership. You can start a yearly subscription for about $225, $250, something like that. That's going to give you access to all the templates on the website, including the personal status correction, which includes setting up your trust and doing your secured party creditor filing. Well, it doesn't include doing your secured party creditor filing, but it includes instructions and templates for you to review if that's something you want to do. I also have document preparation services. I can prepare your documentation for your secured party creditor filing. I can't so much do the filing because, well, I can do the filings, but only when I have enough people that want to go through. The requirement is that you have two guarantors or sureties on your master discharge indemnity bond, and they should also be secured parties or at the same time filing their secured party creditor paperwork. So for those of you who are not in groups of three, if you still are looking for other guarantors or sureties, or you want me to do your paperwork, reach out to me, let me know the situation, and if I have two other people I can link you with, and we can facilitate things that way. But that being said, the cheapest way to do your secured party creditor filing is to do it yourself with your colleagues or your family. Prepare the paperwork for each of them, or have me prepare the paperwork, and you do the filing yourself. And of course, I can offer you some guidance on how to file, where to file, what the filing fees are, and answer other questions that you may have about the secured party creditor filing. Not about the secured party creditor filing that you did with some other organization that does it the way that they do it. I can't answer questions about your secured party creditor filing if it doesn't align with what we're doing. I mean, I can try to answer a question, but I can't speculate about what other people were doing and recording. Anyway, that being said, check it out. Listen, go to thctrust.org. Then when you get there, click this that says creating an account. If you already have an account, then simply just log in. Okay, so the most important thing on a website and what we're going through today is personal status correction. But before I do that, if you're interested in the membership, you can click right here where it says membership. If you're interested in a coaching session, which is $75 per session, you can click right here and get to the coaching session, right? So all that stuff is right here on this website. But today we're under the advanced topics personal status correction menu. I'm going to just jump right into this, and we're going to go through it as quick as possible. But it's not really a quick subject matter, but we're going to go through it as quick as possible. So the first part of personal status correction is name and address correction. Let's start with, I have the address correction first, but I would say let's start with the name correction. So a court order process, I'm going to read this and then I'm going to explain. A court order process, that's the best way to do a name correction, is a court order process, meaning you go to your probate court or your chancery court, you ask them for the name change packet. And then they give you the name change packet, and then you change, correct, update your name. Now, is everybody going to do this? I suspect not, but this part is here for Moors and Moorish Americans who want to change their name and add their appellation L or Bay, or others who have a different reason for changing their name. Maybe they want their name to reflect their national identity or their culture or something to that effect. So these are often the reasons why people change their name, because a name is part of your identification, and they want to further identify themselves as foreign to some degree, just to be very basic and generic. So in general, that's a purpose for a name correction / name change. This doesn't really have to be explained to Moorish Americans because most of them understand the reason why they're doing it and things like that. Now, there's other people who ask me all the time, I'm not a Moorish American, I'm not a Moor, what should I do? And I can't tell you what you should do, right? So it's not even about telling you what you should do. I'm just laying out this blueprint. You have to be able to eat the fish and pick out the bones, right? Use what applies to you. Maybe you don't need a name correction, right? However, what we are doing with this name correction is we are creating a new in legis. No matter what name you change, correct, what trade names, DBAs you file, they're all going to be a derivative of your estate. I'm talking about the estate that was created at birth. When you do a name correction or change, they're going to require your birth certificate. I believe they're going to require your birth certificate. Are they? I think they're going to require your birth certificate. It's been a while since I did it. But we take this new in legis that we create, because when you get this new name and they give you this court order, they'll tell you that this is your new name, this is a new identity, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a new in legis. So what is within an identity, right? Usually your identity relates to your status. When the police pull you over, they say, let me see your ID, your identity card. And what they're looking for, at least in part, is your name and your address. Because your address, the majority of you listening to this right now, your address that's on your ID card is a residential address, right? It has already been determined to be a residential address, irregardless of who you are, who you claim to be, what you say your status is, and all of that. It's a United States residential address. Or you have a United States business address, right? Or a P.O. box. These are all United States addresses. What I'm saying is they're within the jurisdiction of the United States. They all have a zip code. Zip codes put things into the federal jurisdiction, just to keep it simple, right? So this is why, okay, so this is what I was getting at. If you have a residential address, then that establishes the prima facie evidence that you are indeed a resident. If you receive any mail at a residential address, you're simply a resident. There's no way around it, because you're creating records, and records is what's used for evidence to make a determination about what one is. So the post office is let's say, they're a government office, or they're a contractor for the government, and they are keeping records that other areas of the government access and rely on to make determinations about your status and your person. So they're definitely keeping an address. They're scanning, they're keeping records of every time they deliver mail in your proper name at a residential address. Your name and your address equal identity, right? Because if a police pulled you over and he said, let me see your license, and you said, I don't have a license, he's going to ask you for your name and your address, because he's trying to identify you, right? And the United States has these laws that you may say, well, I get mail at a different address, not where I live. If you walk away from a post receptacle with mail, well, two things. One, if you walk away from a post receptacle with mail in a name other than your own, then you've committed a felony. That's the first thing. So you may say, to avoid being a citizen or a resident or creating the prima facie evidence as such, I'm just going to give my mail at a P.O. box in a different name, or an off slant, or whatever, right? So just be aware of the laws involved with that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, you're not going to circumvent it. You don't circumvent the system by getting mail in another name, getting mail at a different residential address. I don't believe under any circumstances you should get mail where you sleep at. Like they say, don't S where you sleep. You shouldn't receive any mail where you sleep. But the point is, I've been stating all of these things to try to get you to understand that you have to have a private mailing address. And this is very important. You should have a private mailing address. This is your first step of personal status correction. And you are to never, ever receive mail in the public again. Ever. Any address, whether it's a P.O. box or residential address or business address in the United States, any address where you have received mail before or where you will receive mail, you must permanently forward it to your private mailbox after you create the private mailbox. You have to permanently forward it, never ever receive mail in the public again. There's so much that can be said on it. There's different benefits and things that it's going to provide for you, but that's beyond the scope of just getting through this information. You can further do your research and dig into that topic, but I'm just telling you because I keep finding out that people are kind of skipping through this step because they don't really think it's that important, right? It's absolutely important if you're trying to be private, if you're trying to be foreign, and for the purpose of dealing with securities and all the different things that you want to do as a secured party, you must operate from the private address. What is a private address? Well, you can Google it, but what we're going to do is we're going to go right to USPS.com and, we're going to go right to USPS.com. We're going to copy this right here. Notice on this website here, right in step 1, I put copy and paste so you can read through this. I'm telling you to do your address correction. But I don't put when it comes to certain government links, I don't put them in here because if I put the link in here, you click on it, they keep records showing how you got to their website. And they're going to be tracking it right back here to thctrust.org. So realistically, we just going to copy and paste. And we're just going to look at this private mailbox thing right quick just so you can get a better understanding of what it is. So I paste that in here and we see right here, USPS.com. Private mailbox address. So a private mailbox is obviously something because they use the word private. Where do they use the word private? Anywhere. So private as opposed to public. So that's enough, right? That's all you need to understand. Now, why is it private? Let me explain to you why it's private. It is what makes this mailbox private is the fact that you receiving your mail through an agent. There is no prima facie evidence or presumption that you are then receiving mail as a resident. Just like residential addresses are designated, so are, so are private mailboxes. Those are also designated, right? So it doesn't matter who you are, you receive the mail at a residential address, prima facie evidence of a residence. Receive the mail at a private address, that means the presumption is that the mail being delivered to the private address is being delivered to an agent, not an individual, not a surety, not a resident. You get it? So the legal relationship that occurs when you receive mail is different. And this stuff is being tracked and accounted for in the postal system, right? There's already an agreement with USPS and a commercial mail receiving agent with regard to that private mailbox. And it's very important. Now, here's another thing. A lot of people don't understand. When you click this link and you go here, it's going to explain to you how to properly address a private mailbox. And you can't just make this up. When you get a private mailbox, just like anything else, they're going to give you what your address is. But you have to pay attention to this to make sure that everything is addressed properly. You cannot take a public mailbox and adjust it to make it look like a private mailbox. You won't have a private mailbox. So basically what I'm saying is there's a private mailbox and there's a public mailbox. Private mailboxes tend to have PMB, which stands for private mailbox, or has a pound symbol right here. It doesn't have suite number, whatever. You can't just turn your suite number into a pound symbol and now have a private mailbox. It doesn't work like that. So don't overlook that step. Familiarize yourself with that step. It's very important. It's very, very, very important. Let me get this back centered here. So again, remember you're here at thctrust.org. We're going through the personal status correction menu right now. We're at step 1. There's not many steps in here, as you can see. Step 1, where we have address correction and name correction. Step 2, other instruments to be held in trust, because we're getting ready to do the trust, which is step 3, creating or establishing, setting up the trust to control the estate. And then step 4, which is our secured party creditor filing. So this is what we're intending to get through. I know we're not going to get through all of this right now, but I'm just going to at least do one video and go through some of the legwork. Now, everything you need to be set up like I am set up is in this master file status correction matrix. The way that I did it is laid out right here. So you have it. And of course, you can consult with me. I can do document preparation, prepare drafts and things like that. But one thing when you're not going to get answers from me is when you come at me with like, how much are you going to charge me just to do it for me? You're not even speaking about doing anything in particular. You're just saying, do it for me. It shows me that you're really not invested. You're not trying to understand. You just want to throw up your hands and have somebody do some paperwork for you. And I don't really like dealing with people like that. So I usually ignore those requests. When you're like, hey, I need to set up this trust, blah, blah, blah. How much would you charge me to set this trust up or whatever? When you're very specific, it makes me understand that you comprehend and know what you're trying to do. So, I'm more inclined to help you. I'm not inclined to help somebody who's just moving through things blindly, looking to rely totally on somebody else and have no personal knowledge of themselves. Those people tend to be liabilities. So anyway, we talked about address correction. We briefly talked about name correction if that's something you're going to do. That's why I put optional here. When you do this name correction, you create a new in legis, a new entity. Remember, an identity has a name and address. So that's why I say realistically you should do your name correction first if you're going to do such, because why would you do the name correction, right? Usually when people do the name correction, and I'm not saying that you have to do a name correction, but for Moores, for example, my name is Sylvester Dylan Moore. That's the straw name. That's the name that was titled to my estate at birth. But when I'm operating, doing business in my private capacity, I'm Sylvester Moore L. It's not on my birth certificate, but that is the name of the private banker and a trustee that administers the trust. So this name correction court order has granted a name Sylvester Moore L, as some of you say, which is my new in legis. So if somebody pulls me over and says, "What's your name and your address?" I can't give them a residential address with this new in legis. So I'm going to give them my new name that I do my private banking and trust, my private banking through. I'm going to give them the name for the private banker, and I'm going to give them the correlating private address. Okay? That's how that works. All right. So once we set that up, we're preparing, which is the next thing, is to set up our trust. So when we say set up our trust, we're talking about basically a trust that's going to control our estate, right? Because an estate, you can't just operate directly through the estate. You have to operate through a trust. And people are going to ask, well, what type of trust should I have? Should the trust be revocable? Should the trust be irrevocable? Should it be a business trust? Should it be a family trust? Should all these different things? We're going to get to that. However, before we get to the trust, we're going to look at some of the things that need to be held in the trust. These are, let's say, independent processes that you can do before setting up your trust. I don't want you to think that everything has to be done in this order, but this is like a logical order to do things. But don't look at things as it's got to be done this way or it's got to be done that way, or you're going to lose yourself, right? You're going to get lost in this thing. Make sense of it. Don't try to follow instructions or steps without comprehending what you're doing. Pause, step back, ask questions, get a better understanding. But I did try to lay it out in as most logical and as reasonable manner as possible to help you out. So before we set up our trust, some of the things we want to do, and I say we want to do these things first because these are records or rights or property or contracts that we want to hold in the trust. So first thing we want to do is a trademark. Trademarking the name of the estate created at birth, John Alex Doe. The reason why we trademarking it is because this is the name that's used in commerce, right? It's the name that when people charge our estate to create money, the way that they generally do things in banking in the public, right? So by securing your trademark, you can secure the proceeds. how can I explain this? Basically, this trademark is going to be part of your secured party creditor filing, securing the proceeds of the trademark. That way, when someone wants to use your name to create finances, you have the first paramount priority interest lien on it, and you can charge. You know, I'm gonna skip over this, so I'm not. I know I'm not explaining this well, but you can click this link right here. You see how the little thing came up because you can click this, and it's gonna take you to a whole different page with the video, with the template, and everything to explain how you do this trademark under the common law, right? So I'm not gonna go through that, but that's explained. And once you do that, you're gonna have this notice of trademark, and you can use that document to move it into your trust. So you execute that, you're gonna have your notice of trademark. I did a real in-depth video breaking this down, so excuse me for just rushing over it right now. Then you have your fee schedule and your compensation schedule. And this is something that I add at the end of the trust, right? Because the fee schedule is for the use of trust property or even the use of the trademark, requiring the trademark to be written on a ticket or whatever, right? So there's a bunch of different things in the fee schedule. We'll look at the fee schedule. We'll take a look at it because I can't click it right here because it's actually behind the trust instrument. But again, these are just instruments that I want to get executed first because when I put the trust on record, when you put the trust on record, some of these instruments you might also want to be available to the public so that they can have constructive notice, such as the trademark. So now you can hold somebody accountable for improperly using your trademark without authority, or even the fee schedule of compensation. So now you can expect anyone that you interact with to have constructive notice that the trust charges a fee for its time, for the use of its property, etc. Then we have a property list, which is typically called a Schedule A. And this is just a property list where you can list all the property that you want to go into that trust. I'll just keep it at that for now. That's also, this property list is going to be behind the trust instrument. We'll see it when we get to that. Then this is very important, this memorandum of law. You will find this memorandum of law throughout thctrust.org in various different parts. Now, I will say this, personally, I would not put this memorandum of law with my certification of trust or with my trust instrument that's going to be available to the public. Meaning, if I record this trust in a certain jurisdiction, or if I record a certification or abstract of this trust, and I put the fee schedule there and the trademark and all these things that I want people to see so they can have constructive notice of how my trust operates, what I will not include is this memorandum of law. Let's look at the memorandum of law real quick. We've looked at it in other videos because it's the same memorandum of law that we use when it comes to discharging debts and things like that. This memorandum of law is appropriate for this trust because the purpose of this trust, aside from controlling the estate, is primarily to facilitate commerce in the absence of substance-backed currency. So it is to create the vessel so that we can discharge debts, redeem our securities, interest or credit or whatever that we're entitled to. So that's the core purpose of it. And therefore, this memorandum of law is going to talk about the national emergency, the banking emergency, the new money under this system, bankers' acceptances, notes, bills of exchange, and it's going to break down all of these things that you're relying on to facilitate commerce. So, for example, you do a banker's acceptance on a debt to discharge it, or these. So anyway, this memorandum of law, you will refer to this many times, not just for personal status correction, but for other things that you're doing. There's a lot in here that can help you when you're dealing with the money situation. So I call this Schedule L. Notice Schedule A is the property list. It usually always is. Schedule C is the fee schedule or the compensation schedule. So I call it Schedule C. Then we have Schedule L for law, which is the Memorandum of Laws. Memorandum of Lawful Obligations of the United States. So we got all these laws dealing with the national emergencies, HAR 192, the Gold Clause, all of these. Look how many pages. We got 2.5 pages here. And everything is cited, right? Everything is in there. Everything you're going to need that deals with debt, discharging, and those laws, you'll find them in this memorandum of law. So familiarize yourself with that. All right, so that was the memorandum of law, and then a declaration of nationality. So back again, this is for the Moors, Moorish Americans, or those who are, if you create a new in legis, you do a name correction, and then you create a new private address for this name, you can publish documents that apply to that, such as a declaration of nationality, right? Now, notice I could put all type of other affidavits and things in here, but I don't put things in here that I really don't think will have any specific purpose. So this is pretty much it. And then again, like I said, all of these documents actually are not going to be given with the trust as far as the constructive notice, right? Because I just said the memorandum of law, it's a part of the trust. It's the Schedule L, but I'm not going to publish that. And one reason why I'm not going to publish it, because that's too much information. People don't need to know how I'm moving unless I'm specifically doing business with you. So there's no benefit for me to tell them that basically this trust is for redeeming securities, discharging debt, and to facilitate commerce in the national emergency. I don't want them to know how I'm operating or see me coming unless it becomes necessary. So if I do need to give somebody certain notices that are not in the public, I give them notice directly, right? Through a presentment or documents or whatever. So I hope that makes sense. The above instruments might be included with your abstract, memorandum, or certification of trust in a favorable jurisdiction. Ohio recognizes common law trusts and the principles of equity. Ohio law says the information on record regarding the trust is constructive notice on the public. Ohio also recognizes the existence of foreign business trusts. So, Ohio is a good jurisdiction for recording your trust, the trust that you're using to control your estate with your personal status correction. It may not be the only place, but it's definitely the good place. It's the place where I've recorded my trust instruments. It's also the place where I'm born. So, but, Ohio also, as I said, recognizes foreign trusts. So, now the next step is getting into the trust that controls the estate. Now, let me take a breather here and look at these text messages because I got so many messages in. Let me give it a quick pause here.